What's up YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me today as always. If you like what you see here, do be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and there's plenty more content on the way. So I've got a special edition, if I could only have one, for you today, and this is by special request. A lot of you have been asking for comparisons between the brand new and very popular Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 Compact versus the CZ P-10C. I had another gun in mind as well, but I've decided to take a step from that particular brand and focus on some other ones. So that brings us to today, and I'm really excited about this. Now, the If I Could Only Have One series, a couple of things. We'll be looking at a few specs of the firearms, some general features. Of course, this isn't a deep dive into either one. I'll be wheeling and shooting along the way. We'll take a look at the triggers, and at the end, I will be announcing a winner. But here's the thing. Both of these guns are fantastic, and if you're either interested in either one, you've bought one or you've bought both, you're doing great. So this is just an opportunity to take a step back and challenge myself, and perhaps challenge you to say, if you could only have one, which one would it be? So go ahead and take a look, make sure everything is unloaded. As always, I do have unloaded magazines in each of these firearms. I just prefer it that way, of course. So from a spec standpoint, the overall length of both firearms is 7.3 inches. The height on the CZ P-10C is 5.2 inches versus 5 inches on the M&P. The barrel length is 4.02 inches on the CZ P-10C versus 4 inches on the M&P. And the width, and we'll give you a good look at the width of both of these. The CZ is 1.26 inches versus 1.29 inches on the M&P. From a weight standpoint, the CZ is 26 ounces even versus 26.6 ounces on the M&P. Now that is my measurement, not Smith & Wesson's. That was done on a digital scale with an empty magazine in it. So take that for what it's worth. Both of these firearms do have 15-round steel magazines in them. I'll give you a good look at that. It does come with two, of course. Same thing with the M&P. Now, M&P has been running some specials throughout the summer. I believe one just ended, but perhaps they're going to have another one here before too long. But once again, two magazines with each firearm. So from a feature standpoint, we'll take a look at the CZ here for just a little while. From a grip standpoint, the ergonomics and the grip of the CZ has, for the most part, been very widely accepted. Now, the front and the back straps do have reasonably aggressive texturing on them, and what I mean by that is it's not so bad that it's going to really beat you up, but after a few hundred rounds, you're going to walk away with a little bit of that texture on your hands. Again, not a big deal. It's not painful at all. Definitely stays place in your hand, but it is there for sure. And the side straps are just a little bit more subtle with those little squares, kind of like a maybe a Glock Gen 4, something like that. It does have a slight indentation here to clear magazines if for some reason there's a malfunction. And it does have interchangeable back straps. Comes with 3. This is the medium on the gun right now. For the magazine release, it was pretty firm at first. It is definitely lightened up quite a bit, very usable, and it is ambidextrous on both sides. I really like the placement. I really like the feel of the magazine release. I think they've done a very good job with that. It does have an accessory rail for your lights, lasers, grenade launchers, as you would expect. And they do carry the grip texture forward up on the frame just a little bit for reference points, whether it be your thumb or your finger, something like that. Just a really nice touch, an added bonus there. From a slide release, slide lock standpoint, it is once again ambidextrous out of the box, and this was another thing that was noted early on, at least in this firearm. These were both pretty darn stiff, but once again, they've loosened up significantly, not to a point where it's an issue or anything, but just much, much easier to actuate with the firearm. From a takedown standpoint, it's very similar to a Glock 19. You do have to pull the trigger, but then you've got a couple of takedown tabs on both sides. You just pull the slide back just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch, pull your takedown tabs, and the slide comes right off. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the M&P 2.0. From a frame standpoint, an ergonomics and a grip texture standpoint, the M&P 2.0, both the full size and now the compact version, they definitely come with very aggressive grips. And on the full size, I noted it was almost overly aggressive in my opinion. Not so much to where it caused any pain or anything like that, didn't draw blood or anything, but it was more aggressive than I prefer. However, with the compact, I've noticed that it's not quite as aggressive aggressive, or maybe it's psychological, who knows, but it just feels a little bit better to me, which is good. But it is still pretty aggressive all the way around, and for most, I think they would find that that it feels very good. It's almost like a custom stipple job. So I think M&P, for the most part, good on them for doing that. It certainly stays more planted than the first generation. Now, once again, it does have your little cutouts or indentions here to tear out a magazine if you do have a malfunction, which is nice. And it does come with a removable piece right here if the magazine's out. That'll help you take off your interchangeable back straps, which it comes with 4, which is good. And it also has a little bit of a tool, which I'll explain here in just a moment as well. From a magazine release standpoint, it is not ambidextrous out of the box. However, it is metal, and you can flip it around if you want to. It's not too big of a deal. There's a little metal rod inside. Just move that. It's very similar to a Glock, but very good construction. I really like the placement of the M&P magazine release. I think they just feel good. They did a good job with that. It does have an accessory rail for your lights, lasers, grenade launchers, once again, as expected. And from a slide lock, slide release standpoint, it is ambidextrous out of the box. They put this little dingus here, which I think is not terribly attractive, although whatever it is, what it is. From what I understand, it just prevents slamming the magazine and having the slide go home and have it automatically load around in. So that is kind of like a little bit of a lock there. Now, I said the weight is just a little bit more on this. That's because they've carried the steel frame just a little bit further up into the polymer right here. Not quite to the end, but almost. So it adds a little bit of weight, puts a little bit more weight in front. And at first I thought that might bother me, but it actually, I think it works very well. Makes it a nice, stiff, rigid polymer frame. And I actually kind of like these cutouts. I think they look nice. Some people say they're a little bit corny, a little bit campy. Doesn't bother me a bit. You can get an external safety version of this firearm. I did opt for the no safety. I just prefer that. I don't like external manual safeties on polymer firearms, but that option is available. From a takedown standpoint, it's just a little bit different. You do have to lock the slide back. Once you do, you can pull your lever, and as you're moving the slide forward, you can pull the trigger, or once again, you can take out your little tool or use another punch, whatever, and there's a little tab right in here. I'm not going to show that. I've taken these apart in previous videos, but you pull that tab down, and then you don't have to pull the trigger. I don't really mind. I don't care about pulling a trigger. It's not a big deal, but some people it definitely bothers. So it's nice to have that option for sure. So let's go back to the P10 here for just a little while and talk about these slides. From a slide standpoint, I love the P-10C look. I think the fit and finish is absolutely fantastic. They've done some really nice milling on both sides, so it's not quite as blocky, I'll say, as some firearms out there. Now, it does have forward and rear serrations, and these serrations are definitely very usable, both front and back. I like that quite a bit. From a sight standpoint, it does come with, actually these are not, I don't think these are steel. I think they're actually aluminum, or I've heard that a couple of times. Either way, they're a bump up from polymer sights for sure. And these are the phosphorescent or glowy sights, I like to say. You do charge them for a little while and they'll glow for a period of time. It's great at the range, but not so good for concealed carry. Either way, it's nice to have some pretty good sights out of the box. And it does have a ledge for your one-handed manipulation. So from a slide standpoint, I think CZ did a very good job. And so far, the finish on the slide has held up extremely well. There's not a single mark or mar. This gun has been holstered. It's been used by several people, and it's performed very well. So CZ just did a great job with the slide on this. From a slide standpoint on the M&P, they did reduce a little bit of weight by doing a little bit more milling up here on top. And once again, I think the M&P looks very nice. I think it's a very attractive gun, if nothing else. Now, that compensates for some of the weight in the frame, so you're not really losing anything. They've just put it in a different place. From a serration standpoint, they do have the fish scale serrations, and they are on the back. They're very usable. They're very nice looking. I like them quite a bit. They carried them forward in the front on the 2.0 version, but yeah, you can do press checks, but other than that, I think they're more for aesthetics than anything else. From a sight standpoint, you do get steel 3-dot sights out of the box. They're not glowy or night sights or anything like that. However, they do a very good job. They're decent quality. They're even serrated just a little bit in back to reduce glare. And I think they've upgraded the paint in these. Previous generations had paint that would kind of chip off pretty easily, or at least I found. These aren't so much. These are pretty good quality. And they do, once again, have a ledge for your one-handed limited manipulations, which is great. So from a slide standpoint, I think both of these guns did very well. The M&P does have your Armor Night, I believe it's Armor Night finish on it. And again, both of these guns, I think from a feature and a stat standpoint, are very similar to each other. They feel a little bit different, but both very good quality firearms. So neither one is necessarily out ahead of the other. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a little bit of shooting and see how these guys do. And when we come back, we'll take a look at the triggers and, of course, announce a winner. So be sure to stay tuned. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that footage at the range. Now, you may have noticed that it looked like two separate range sessions, and that is very true. I have taken both of these guns along with a Glock 19 and compared all three together, but believe it or not, for only the second time over the course of 10 months, I decided to not take cameras with me and actually just shoot and enjoy and have a good time with that. So I took a little bit of an indulgence with my shooting session with these guys. So I'm wheeling in a little bit of stock footage from previous sessions, but I've shot the CZ a number of times, and it was my third range session with the compact. So I've developed a pretty good appreciation for how both shoot, and when they shoot together, and we'll leave the Glock off for another day, but when they shoot together, I think they both do a fantastic job. They both feel good. They're both ergonomic, and they run really well at the range. I haven't had a single malfunction or an issue with either one. So I hope you'll forgive the stock footage on that. Sometimes it just is what it is. From a trigger standpoint, here's where things get just a little bit different, however, with both firearms. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the CZ P-10C first. Now, if you remember earlier in the year, people were touting the P-10C trigger as one of the best triggers on the market, and I think a lot of different reviewers were saying that. Some were saying it's really the best, or perhaps right behind the Walther PPQ. I don't really have an opinion on that one way or the other. I like both triggers, but I have really come to appreciate this trigger quite a bit. Now, it's really nice. It is a safety dingus or safety lever trigger like you would expect a lot of other polymer firearms. However, the physics and the cant or the curvature of this trigger is a little bit more flat, which I like quite a bit, and that makes for a couple of things. First, from an uptake standpoint, there is definitely some uptake there, but it's extraordinarily smooth, and then you get to a very defined wall, and it just doesn't feel like you're traveling very far, even though you're traveling a little ways. But then you've got your brake, and then the reset, and the reset on this gun is absolutely fantastic. And of course, I'm going to do this again. There's your uptake, very smooth. There's your brake, and there's your reset, and then we get back out to the start. So from a trigger perspective, the CZ P-10C, at least for me, for my purposes, has really come to be one of my favorite triggers, to be honest. So I'm just kind of being transparent with you guys with that. From a trigger perspective on the M&P 2.0, here's where we get just a little bit different. Now, this is a hinged design trigger. Now, they've made some improvements from the earlier generation model, and I'll talk about those as we kind of move through this. But one thing I've noted on both this and the full-size M&P, the take-up on this is not anywhere near as smooth as it is on a lot of other firearms, which is really disappointing to me. There's just it feels like there's some grit and some gravel. This one's a little bit better than the full-size. However, it is definitely still there. But once you get to the wall, you do have your brake, and it's a nice crisp audible brake. I mean, it's not too far off from the CZ, so I don't think one is necessarily better than the other from that standpoint. But then the reset is right there. Not very audible, not very tactile. And then it gets back out to the front. It's not bad, but it's not the best. So we're going to do this again. There's your uptake. There's your brake. And there's your reset, and you're back out to the start. Again, it's certainly a decent trigger, but in my opinion, it's just not as good as the CZ P-10C. In fact, I think there are definitely some other firearms out there that are a little bit better. Now, a lot of people have suggested getting like an Apex trigger or something like that, and I will definitely be looking into those options. But for the time being, it's nice to keep things just stock or production from a testing standpoint. So, not the best trigger, but it is certainly livable, and it's definitely a shooter at the range. So from a value standpoint, one other thing to talk about, the CZ P-10C, there is a black and an FDE model. The FDE model is a little bit harder to find, but they're both out there in the wild now, and you can find them anywhere from the upper $400s to the very low $500. Now, the MSRP on it is $500, but the supply and demand thing kind of kicks over there. So if you can find them for $500 or less, I think you're doing fine, and out of the box, you're getting a lot of gun for the money. The M&P 2.0 right now is coming in a little bit over $500 for the most part, or right around $500. So you're not spending more one way or the other necessarily. And if you have found some other good deals out there online, be sure to let me know. So this brings us to the end of the video, and once again, it's an if I could only have one, so here's where I need to pick a winner, and it's always tough to do this when guns are both a lot of fun to shoot at the range. They both feel good. They're the right size firearms, and I've talked about the M&P 2.0 being, the compact rather, being definitely the right size versus the full size, and the Smith & Wesson definitely has a lot of really good things going for it. If you're looking for a gun that has almost custom stipple feel to it from a grip standpoint and an ergonomic ergonomic standpoint, this definitely has it in spades. And it's got a lot of nice features and fit and finish that I think is fantastic. Now, some people have said they've had some issues with corrosion or rust on some of these. I haven't found that to be the case here in the Midwest, but I suppose that might depend on the climate you're in, but your mileage may vary there. Otherwise, I think M&P really hit a home run with the M&P 2.0 compact. I think it's the right size, and it feels good, it shoots good. So it's definitely been a very good firearm. That being said, the CZ P-10C has really sort of won my heart a little bit. And I know it's won almost every If I Could Only Have One that it's featured, and I'm going to have to put this thing away for a while because it's been in a lot of videos this year. But it just has been an absolutely fantastic firearm. I think the fit and finish, the feel, the ergos are absolutely fantastic. The slide construction is very good. It's a very good looking gun. But overall, or above all, I think the trigger is probably one of the best out there, and I said it before just a little while ago. At first, I was not quite as impressed as some of the early reviewers really made it out to be, but now that it's got right around 1,000 rounds in it, it has really come into its own, and it feels fantastic. So at the end of the day, although both of these guns are absolutely fantastic, if I could only have one, I would choose the CZ P-10C. So I'm really looking forward to reading your comments and hearing your feedback about this, whether you agree or disagree, if you've got either one or both of these firearms, what your experiences are. If you'd like to see some other videos in the If I Could Only Have One series. A quick reminder, don't forget to check out Abaddon Apparel. Link is down below for all of your Second Amendment apparel needs and some other really cool things going on that website, so be sure to check it out. And once again, thanks so much for joining me. I will see you next time.